Hello, people. Today I'll be starting a new series on my channel. It's more of an audiobook of the story I've been writing for 11 months at this point, so almost a year. The Lost Son of Universe Zero. Some parts inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, Stranger Things, SCP, Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn, Angels with Scaly Wings, and some of its mods. And the name Ushio comes from Ushio's gaming playthrough of the game, mentioned prior. If you want to go check him out, I won't stop you. And then current news. Disclaimer. Before we begin, I do not intend for any ill intent with copyright or anything, so please don't nuke this. Chapter 1. Caught in the Middle. Prologue. It had been a month since Nick's parents had died in a car accident, and he was now on his way to new parents across the country. A bell rang and a voice came over the intercom breaking him from thought. Flight 11535 to Reno is ready for boarding. Nick got up, then walked to the entrance to the plane and gave the person his ticket and sat down. 2 hours later, Act 1. Nick was awoken by a sudden jolt and an orange flash and wondered what was going on. Nick quickly looked out of his window. He saw a lake with what looked like homes on it, and the plane was streaming towards a large hole in a mountain near an old abandoned city. Nick barely had any time to think or do anything before he hit his head on the seat in front of him when the plane crashed. 3 hours later, Nick woke up. His head hurt. The air around him smelled like metal, burnt clothes, and jet fuel. He peeked out of his window that overlooked what was once the wing of the airframe, and he saw pillars of stone and rubble from when the plane impacted the walls. Nick slowly got out of his seat. Walking towards an emergency exit, he noticed that everyone else was not awake. No, worse, breathing, meaning he was all alone. As Nick exited the aluminum can once known as a plane, he heard a sound off in the distance. A It got closer and louder. Nick ran back into the plane. Out of the dark came a large red dragon. A large red dragon came sprinting at the plane, then suddenly stopped and sniffed the air and began to speak. Is someone there? And if you are, don't be afraid to come out of your weird metallic cylinder of a cone point. Nick, slow and carefully, with caution, walked out of the plane and said, "Hello, I guess whoever you are, you could see that something has gone wrong, and uh, I have no clue where I am." Nick looked around and observed that there were many walkways and tunnels, and the largest tunnel, leading deeper into the mountain, had small gold coins littered across the floor. The dragon spoke again and said, "Well, one, you are in my home of Erebor, and two, you're in Middle Earth. Now I have a question, you, you small child. What is your name?" "My name is Nick, and I'm assuming you're the Great Smog, as they would say. And I should probably start running because I know what you've done." And that fucking plane over there might explode at any second, caving in my only exit. besides the one that needs a key for a secret keyhole thing, Nick said. No, 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 you're fine to stay here for a bit, considering you've just come out of nowhere. Just follow me and try not to get lost, Smog said. Nick began following Smog into a very large room that was almost too familiar, like he had seen it before. Which he did, but anyway, as he entered the room, all he could see was a sea of random golden and crystal jewelry and coins, cups, and a few statues of dwarves. Nick noticed that the room was getting darker, so he went back to playing and took an emergency flashlight from a storage cabinet. Then he quickly ran back to the large chamber in the middle of a mountain. The room was completely dark, so he clicked on the flashlight. Click! Flicker. Flicker. The flashlight kept flashing. Nick, out of the corner of his eye, saw Smog rapidly approaching, but by the time Nick turned to face him, it was too late. With a final flash, all Nick could see was the long dark abyss of his throat. 1 week later, Nick woke up in a daze. He felt groggy and stiff, like he was hit by a train, and the last thing he remembers was that he had crashed into Earth and got ambushed by a dragon that was acting friendly. Nick slowly took note of where he was. He was in the large room of gold, where he knew Smog was. Nick decided to find a way outside and then take a walk down to the lake. On his way to the lake, he explored the ruins of the destroyed town He found a few old coins here and there and continued on his way. Once at the lake, he took a small cup he took from the gold room, filled it with water. Nick knew he would need to boil it, but Nick could not because he had no wood or cook pots to boil with. Unless he could use a tree to make a boat to get to the lake town. Nick carved a large gash in a tree that he knocked over, fashioned a paddle from the scraps of the part he carved up. Then it occurred to him he had no knowledge of how to make a boat before he woke up. Nick asked himself, how did I do this when I don't know how to spell things correctly? Nick paddled towards the town in the center of the lake. When he approached, he saw the town's guards scatter and prepare. Nick approached the gate, and the gate man said, "Halt! Who are you, and what is your business here?" Nick said, "My name is Nick McCone, and I am from near the mountain. I need supplies." The guard said, "Why do you live near the mountain? And you seem like you're not familiar with Middle Earth." So, yeah, I just got this part of Middle Earth. Also, I mainly wanted to investigate that weird object that crashed down yesterday, Nick said, acting like he didn't know anything. Yesterday? It's been only a it's been only a week, but we'll give you supplies and send you on your way. But feel free to come back whenever, the guard said. Nick was shocked. How could he not remember the whole week unless he wasn't awake for the entirety of it? Nick returned to the shore and pulled his new boat up to the mountain where he saw one of the plane's engines. This gave Nick an idea. A idea to destroy all of our ideas. He would reverse engineer any surviving technology from the plane and create a new, smaller one. But before he could do that, he would need to find some form of forge. There was one in a mountain, but they had been cold for who knows how long. So Nick made a plan. He would wake Smog, lead him to the furnace room, then trick him into lighting them and melting metal alloys, and then make an airframe. Phase 1 began. Nick woke Smog up, but for some reason Smog looked terrified at the sight of Nick. Hey, why are you running? I need your help with something. No, stay back. You're not real. You're supposed to be dead. Dead? How would I have died? I'm standing here, in front of you. I ate, Nick said. I ate you. How are you here? Smog said. Smog bit at Nick and took off his arm. Why did you? As Nick questioned Smog, they both froze as they saw from a bleeding stump a arm fastly regrowing. What the? Nick said. Nick, Nick's arm was completely back. 3 months later, Nick found that he was, for whatever reason and whatever happened, he was unable to die. Acid? Nope. Fire? Nope. Water? Nope. Everything else? You guessed it. Nope. He also found he could use whatever harmed him, and willed whatever it was, and willed whenever, whatever and whenever. He had also just finished his new plane, a gold aluminum alloy jet designed after the ME-262. It also had cannons that had a crude and perfect ammo, and Smog decided that he would, no puns intended, take him under his wings. He decided it was time for a test flight. They had made a makeshift runway where the original plane crashed at. Nick moved into position and started the engines and started a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Launching. Nick's heart raced as he pushed the throttle, and the plane's engines roared to life with a powerful roaring sound. Nick flew back with a sudden jerk of the acceleration. The plane raged towards the end of the tunnel. Nick closed his eyes on the final approach as he felt a bump. He expected at any second that he would hear a crashing sound, but it never came. He opened his eyes, and he was in the air. Nick decided that he would do a pass around for Lake Town and fly over the mountains over to Rivendell into the Shire, then return. 10 hours later, as he passed over Rivendell, he saw a company of what looked like dwarves and a very small child. But Nick knew that this was Bilbo, so he diverted back to Erebor and managed to land where he took off from, with 1% fuel left. Nick hopped out of a plane and never told Smog what he had saw to preserve what semblance of the original story that he knew. Nick went about checking his aircraft and runway for rubble or debris. After that, he went to what was left of the original plane he had been on and found some paint and someone's luggage and painted the entrance of a hangar airfield area a bright color so he could see it. Then he decided he would take some gold coins and go down to the lake town. Nick walked to his boat where it was, then set off. Nick approached the gate and asked to come into town, and they let him in. Once he was in the town, he went to a few shops. When he was in the town, he overheard people talking about a gold and silverish object that flew over them earlier. Jake, do you think that thing's gonna come back? It looks like it went to the mountain. I don't think so, Anne. Nick was Nick was not shocked at this. He did fly in daylight where people could see. Besides, they didn't know who was in it After overhearing the conversation, Nick got enough supplies to last 2 weeks. Then Nick went back to the mountain. He checked his bag. He grabbed a photo of him and his family a month before into his phone. Then scribbled down the dates and the birth and death of his parents. Then under himself put lost to be found. Then put it in his pocket. When he went back into the mountain, 3 months later, this is the very moment Nick was waiting for. The dwarfs had arrived. Nick quickly got into the plane ready, and soon enough he was in the air with Smog attacking Lake Town. And on his last approach, he saw Smog prepare to attack someone in a tower, and Nick moved in to block the arrow he knew would come. But as he was in position, he heard glass break and felt a sharp pain across his face. But when he looked back, the arrow still made its mark. Smog was dead, and Nick had to try to find a new place to stay. Act 2, Rejected. It had been a month since Smog died, and Nick had been almost every corner of Middle Earth, but because of who he had as some sort of parent before, all he got was rejection from people. And Nick was getting desperate and was edging closer to the one place he never didn't want to venture to. The citizens of Minas Tirith were startled by a round, ear-piercing roar as Nick came in to land on the long, triangular section of the city. He is going to try to look for new parents here. As Nick went around, all he got was, "You're not welcome here. Go away, you freak." Some people were more polite and said, "Sorry, there's nothing we could do to help you." After searching the whole city, Nick knew he had to leave and fly further into the south, leaving one last person, to go to. As Nick took off, he knew that he would probably go insane because of this one person, and this person's name was Sauron. Nick saw the black gate below as he soared through the sky towards the ruins of the tower fortress Barad-dûr. He circled around to find a spot to land and landed. Then he went to walk into the ruins. As Nick approached a large room, he was blinded by a sudden flash of orange light. Nick quickly covered his eyes to shield his eyes. When Nick uncovered his eyes, he saw an elvish figure quickly approaching him. Nick asked, "Are you Sauron, mister?" "Yes, and I've heard all about what happened, and I know you're searching for someone to take care of you. I will be that person. Together we can make the world a better place," Sauron said. Nick, thinking to himself, said, I know about I know more about you than you me, and I'm going to have to play along with anything you do and limit my exposure to your evil. But maybe I can make you change and be good. Act 3, The War of the Ring. It had been 59 years and 364 days since Sauron took in Nick, and a lot had changed in Mordor. Technology from Nick's world came quickly, and so had many other advancements in technology. Engineers came up with ion engines to replace jets. Nick designed and had large starships made that had massive railgun turrets, jump drives, and an untested device that would take us to other universes. Later at midnight, the new year would be started with the detonation of a nuclear warhead. That's totally not going to go wrong at all. Nick, on the other hand, learned from Sauron and made himself a weapon resembling a katana, with a spell on it that it will never break and never dull. Nick also upgraded his point and have its wings being able to tilt upwards, giving it VTOL capabilities like an osprey. Nick and Sauron somehow managed to get into arguments about whose side of the army was better, but they stopped when they both realized that was a kind of dumb thing to argue about. It was not a dumb thing to argue about. In the spring, Mordor had pushed Gondor to Osgiliath, and they had a location on the ring, but because Nick knew how the story should go, he decided to let the Nazgul deal with it and fought in some of the skirmishes in Osgiliath, providing air support and strafing positions for most of the war into the Battle of Minas Tirith, where he was told to attack and destroy emplacements. But Nick told his fleet of ships to stay in orbit after Mordor lost, and Nick knew it was coming. But Nick's decision was wise because of the failsafes Nick heard rumors about. Nick heard rumors from some form of failsafe Sauron made in case the ring got destroyed. Then, little did Nick know, the countdown to Doomsday had 20 minutes after Gondor's army arrived at the Black Gate. All Nick knew was that he needed to aid Frodo and Sam with their mission. But first, he had to fight his way to Mount Doom. Nick soared through the air, dodging arrows and eagles. Then Nick saw an eagle going head on, but with a burst of cannon fire, the eagle was falling from the sky. Then he saw one of the Nazgul's jets flying towards the mountain. Nick over the radio said, "I'm sorry, it's not personal." Then he took aim and released three bursts of cannon fire, and the plane burst into a large flaming wreck hurtling towards the ground at 400 miles per hour. Sauron, who was observing, at first thought it was mistaken identity, but as Nick flew towards Mount Doom with other Nazgul, he saw Nick do the same with three more planes, then sent someone after him. Nick flew past the door to enter the active volcano. Nick heard multiple pinging sounds and saw one of his engines had been blown to bits, but the attacker overshot. Then Nick soon dispatched them. Then Nick made an emergency landing on the mountain. Just as Frodo and Sam came running out, the flaming orange eye on the crumbling fortress exploded. Nick got out of his plane, but over the radio, he heard, "Hey boss, we have multiple missile launches from deep within Mordor, and there's a missile about to land on every major part of the continent." Nick noticed too late in the sky a white streak falling into the middle of Mordor. Then all of a sudden, a flash. Then nothing but quiet and blackness. For 30 long seconds, there was nothing. Then Nick was able to see again. He looked down to see his entire body reforming. Then he looked up into the burning, hateful glow of a fresh mushroom cloud. Then he realized that the world had just ended. A rain of nuclear hellfire had been released upon the world. Then Nick, in anger at the fact he wasn't dead, screamed, and somehow managed to make a shockwave so strong it blew away the rocks near him. From the wreckage of his now melted plane, he got an extra radio and called for an evac to his ship. Then, once he got there, he ordered all ships to form up. The country of New Mordor was formed. Then Nick activated the multi-universal drive, then jumped to scout wherever they'd end up. This has been this has been chapter one of The Lost Son of Universe Zero. Hope y'all enjoyed. There will be more episodes like this in the future.